Springfest is happening now at Lowe's. Keep the spotlight on your yard with Stay Green Premium 2 cubic foot mulch, 5 bags for $10. Plus, when you want more help indoors, get up to 40% off select major appliances that help you supercharge your chores. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid to 4/22 while supplies last. Selection varies by location. See Lowe's.com for details. Mulch offer excludes Alaska and Hawaii.
Chronic migraine, 15 or more headache days a month, each lasting 4 hours or more, can make me feel like a spectator in my own life.
Botox, onabotulinum toxin A, prevents headaches in adults with chronic migraine. It's not for those with 14 or fewer headache days a month. It's the #1 prescribed branded chronic migraine preventive treatment.
Prescription Botox is injected by your doctor. Effects of Botox may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness can be signs of a life-threatening condition. Patients with these conditions before injection are at highest risk. Side effects may include allergic reactions, neck and injection site pain, fatigue, and headache. Allergic reactions can include rash, welts, asthma symptoms, and dizziness. Don't receive Botox if there's a skin infection. Tell your doctor your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, including ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, myasthenia gravis, or Lambert-Eaton syndrome, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects.
Why wait? Ask your doctor, visit BotoxChronicMigraine.com, or call 1-800-44-BOTOX to learn more.
For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, Capitol Bureau Chief and host of Under the Dome. Today, I'm joined by my politics team colleague, Kyle Ingram. It is, as you're listening to this on Tuesday, January 13th, too late to say Happy New Year? Kyle, what's your take?
I think the whole month is fair game. We're all still, working out our resolutions. I'm still in New Year mode.
Okay, so come February 1st, no more New Year's talk, people.
Yeah.
Well, what's going on at the General Assembly this month is technically a session. It's just procedural. 2025 is not over yet. Here that we are now in the new year, 2 weeks into the new year, the 2025 legislative session is not officially adjourned. The new short session will start in April. So we're kind of having what's been the pattern in recent years of these gavel in and outs once a month. But there are actually committees meeting, some study committees, some other things. Kyle, I'm going to start with you. This Gen Gov committee last week in the DAVE division, which is an acronym for our state auditor, and there's some news out of that. So what's going on?
Yeah, so the legislature created this new division within the Office of the State Auditor called the Division of Accountability, Value, and Efficiency, which is an acronym for DAVE, the auditor's name, Dave Bullock. And this is sort of a DOGE-like division that is tasked with analyzing the vacancies in state government and coming to a conclusion where they'll recommend some combination of potential job cuts or elimination of state agencies. And what we saw last week was the first substantive work product of that division, where they had put out this report on lapsed salary dollars, which is the amount of money that is generated by funding positions that are not filled within the state government. So this report comes out and it says that there are 8,800 long-term vacancies in state government. So that's a job that's been unfilled for 6 months or longer. And his report says that those vacancies have generated over $1 billion in lapsed salary dollars. And what happens with that money is that often the agency that is budgeted for those positions can still use that money for something else, for related expenditures due to their work. And some of it could also potentially revert back to the General Assembly when it isn't used. So this report comes out, and it doesn't immediately include any recommendations for cutting jobs. It's just saying this is the state of lapsed salary in North Carolina. Then, after the report comes out, Bullock goes before the Gen Gov committee that we were talking about so that he can explain these findings to lawmakers and they can ask him questions. And he still is not coming with any concrete recommendations for what to do about it, but he does present lawmakers with this very long list of scenarios of what they could do with this information, where he says, if you were to cut this many jobs under this many conditions, you would save this much money. For example, he said that if you cut every job that had been vacant for 2 years or longer, which is about 3,000 jobs, it would save the state $137 million.
Isn't this kind of what was in the House budget proposal anyway, that they talked about taking or cutting some vacant jobs? So this is just maybe the hard numbers look at it. The House proposal was, now I'm forgetting, I feel like it was 20%, but the taking a certain percentage of longtime vacant jobs and just cutting those positions entirely. Now that wasn't in the Senate proposal, but both proposals had to cut some jobs. So what I'm hearing, especially since this is coming out now from Bullock's office, is that we're probably going to see some positions cut at some point in this year in proposed legislation that might have enough support from both chambers.
I think that's fair to say. I will say, so this division, DAVE, as it's called, is different from DOJ, what you saw at the federal level, in that it doesn't have any powers of its own to actually cut jobs or fire people. That would still have to come from the General Assembly. But what you did hear from Bullock when he was testifying before GenGov is that, cutting some of these vacant jobs may be part of the solution, but he said he's also not opposed to increasing the salary for jobs or adding jobs where needed. The report that he produced came with some reasons for why some of these jobs have been vacant for so long. And the most common reason was that there wasn't enough money. The salary wasn't high enough.
Well, I think it's interesting that you said it's jobs that are vacant 6 months or longer, and 6 months or longer is the time we've been waiting on a new comprehensive state budget,
yes,
which would have some raises. Mm-hmm. But there were these three very small spending bills that passed, and some money that was given to Bullock's office himself, right, for his staff.
Yes, I mean, the money for DAVE, this new division, was included in, I believe, one of the mini budget bills. Mm-hmm. And so that added new employees to the state auditor's office who were tasked with looking into these vacancies and potentially recommending cuts. I should note that there is somewhat of a caveat to the lapse salary report. On the same day that Bullock was going to testify before GenGov, the governor's office actually sent a letter to Bullock's office in which they said, we agree with you that these vacancies are a problem that we are working on fixing and that the lapse salary is a high figure. But they're saying that his $1 billion price tag is an overcount by hundreds of millions of dollars because in that 8,800 vacancies he was including are what's called unfunded placeholder positions. Somewhere, I forget the exact number of them, were in this category, but some state agencies have jobs that are purposefully left vacant, but are there if a certain scenario triggers them to be necessary. So within the Department of Commerce, there's these positions that deal with unemployment, and they're only triggered to be filled if there's some sort of unemployment emergency in the state. And most of these unfunded placeholders would actually be funded by the federal government in that case. So the state isn't really the one who would be footing the bill for that. And likewise, there are other federal funded positions that were included in his $1 billion price tag, and positions that are funded only by receipts. So they're positions that are funded by the actual revenue that is brought in by that work.
So that's not, the state wouldn't be paying those salaries anyway, I
right.
guess, if you're saying it's federally funded.
Right.
So how are they, is that just like that's their disagreement and they like air their disagreement and both sides go home? I mean, is there anything coming as a result of that conversation?
I don't think we'll probably see anything from it. I mean, the auditor's office responded to his letter in a statement to us. You can read it on our website at newsobserver.com, where they said there's nothing misleading about that figure. They believed that lapse salary includes these federal positions, these unfunded positions. So they're not walking back on that. Bullock acknowledged it at the GenGov meeting where he said these are all the different types of jobs that we're including in this big figure. It's the full picture of where we stand on vacancies, but it isn't necessarily accurate to say that the state would be, on the hook for all $1 billion of that.
Mm-hmm. I think it's worth noting that at Council of State meeting this past week, Bullock mentioned that the auditor's office is opening a new office in Charlotte. So it'll be interesting to see who pulls that as an example of when you, add more funding to add more positions, better salaries, and how you hire and what the reasons are. Do you remember? I feel like historically, the past several years now, when we look at the state government employee vacancy rate, the highest vacancy rate is usually in Department of Health and Human Services and Public Safety Corrections.
Yep.
Are you saying the same?
Yep. It was those, and then also Commerce, I believe.
Okay, so that's interesting with Commerce. But the other two, I mean, it seems like they've consistently been hard to fill. So I don't know who's out there looking for solutions to that problem. But if you're listening to Under the Dome, you can tell us about it.
Well, and the State Employees Association has weighed in on this and said, the problem is obvious from this report. It's the low compensation. And they say the state needs to get it together, pass a budget, and raise the wages for these jobs if they want to deal with the vacancies issue. Okay,
and we're still waiting on that budget. We'll see if that actually happens. Before the break, I wanted to talk about another committee in kind of the same vein that this past week that met. It's the House Committee on Efficiency. It sort of operated the way you've seen, I feel like, some of the House oversight meetings, but it's not oversight. It's not part of GovOps. And this was looking at those, if people remember those viral undercover videos by this advocacy groups, saying that, local governments, universities were still having DEI programs or funding, even though, the law changed. And so the city of Raleigh came, UNC System, and Asheville. What were you saying, Kyle?
Well, I was just going to mention that in North Carolina, Republicans were not successful in overriding Stein's veto on their DEI laws, but the federal government has released guidance against DEI as well.
Yes, good point. Thank you for noting that. So the result was, Raleigh Mayor Janet Cowell, who's a former state senator, she was at the LOB for that committee. She gave a shout out to former Mayor Paul Coble, who's the Legislative Services Officer, for his upgrades at the Legislative Building and Legislative Office Building. But it was pretty much her laying out everything that, this is what the city's actually doing. And you can read more in our coverage by Raleigh City Government reporter Anna Roman. We are time to take a break. And when we come back, we'll talk about what else is going on this week that you all should be ready for. We'll be right back.
Score more with the college-branded Venmo debit card and earn up to 5% cash back with Venmo Stash. Got paid back? With the Venmo debit card, you can instantly access your balance and spend on what you want, like game day snacks, gear, tickets, and more. The more you do, the more cash back you can earn. Plus, there's no monthly fee or minimum balance. Sign up now at Venmo.com/collegecard. The Venmo MasterCard is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. Select schools available. Venmo Stash terms and exclusions apply at venmo.me/stash terms. Max $100 cash back per month.
So good, so good, so good.
New spring arrivals are at Nordstrom Rack stores now. Get ready to save big with up to 60% off Rag & Bone, Marc Jacobs, Free People, and more.
How did I not know Rack has Adidas?
Because there's always something new.
Join the Nordy Club to unlock exclusive discounts, shop new arrivals first, and more. Plus, buy online and pick up at your favorite Rack store for free. Great brands, great prices. That's why you Rack.
You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan here with Kyle Ingram. Wanted to note we were talking, Kyle rightly pointed out that the anti-DEI laws is out of the federal government. There are still some bills at the state level that are on this list of veto overrides that failed to happen, and that list is still there. So when the legislature comes back, if their numbers are right or if they've swayed Democrats, Republicans still want to override those vetoes from Democratic Governor Josh Stein. So looking this week, if you're listening to this on Tuesday when it comes out, there are 2 joint legislative oversight committees scheduled. There's one on Health and Human Services and one on Medicaid. With our sub-beats on our team here at the News and Observer, Luciana Perez-Uribe-Ginasi covers healthcare and policy, so you can follow her coverage on that. Wednesday, there's a committee that I'll be covering that I'm excited about because I write about taxes a lot, and this is a little bit different. It's the House Select Committee on Property Tax Reduction and Reform, which is the study committee that already started to meet in December. This is a priority of Republican House Speaker Dustin Hall. Republican Representative Aaron Part-Ray of Wake County is also one of the leaders on this, and they're taking a look at how property taxes, which are set by the county, pay for all those things you need wherever you live, the police, parks and recreation, your garbage collection, all of that sort of thing. And that money goes to local governments, not to state government, but the state has some regulatory control, and they're looking at who gets exempted from paying property taxes, if there's a way to not put the burden of increased needs from local governments on people that pay property taxes, homeowners, that sort of thing, and affordability. So we'll see where that how that moves along. There's a few other oversight committee meetings this week, and we'll be covering as much as we can. And you can read all our coverage in the NNO. There's also Board of Elections. So Kyle, what's going on with that?
Yeah, so as you listen to this on Tuesday morning, the State Board of Elections will be gearing up for what could be a pretty long meeting about early voting plans for the primary. So in March, we will have primary elections for 2026 for the midterms. And counties are already having to plan how they're going to make it available for residents to vote early, come out to different sites, and cast their ballots. So what the State Board of Elections has to do is reconcile any disagreements that county boards of elections have had about their early voting plans. So when counties take a vote on where they're going to have sites and what times those sites are going to be open, if it's not completely unanimous among the 5-member bipartisan boards, then it automatically gets sent to the state, which has to decide on a final plan for them. So 12 counties were non-unanimous in their plans for the early voting for the primary. So a lot of those disagreements have to do with whether or not they're going to include voting on Sundays. This has long been a disagreement in North Carolina. Republicans have traditionally been more opposed to having Sunday voting sites than Democrats. And you're also going to see disagreements about whether or not to have polling places on university campuses. There's a big disagreement out of Jackson County about whether or not to have a polling place at Western Carolina University that's been there for many, many elections in the past. The board's new Republican majority has voted to get rid of it. So we'll see how all of that plays out. But what's important to note is that things are going to be different than they have been before because these boards have shifted composition. So traditionally, it has been the governor that appoints the majority of his own party to either the State Board of Elections and county boards of elections. But after Stein was elected, the Republican legislature passed a bill stripping him of that power and instead giving it to the state auditor, who we just talked about, Dave Bolick, who is a Republican. So because of that, all of these boards, there's 100 county boards of elections, 1 state board of election, they all now have a 3-2 Republican majority. So they will be deciding things potentially differently than these boards have done them when they were led by Democrats over the last 10 or so years.
So is there going to be an immediate change out of what comes out of the meeting this week?
Well, they will decide ultimately what the early voting plans are going to be. Now, of course, there's always a much lower turnout for the primary than there will be for the general. We'll have to go through all of this again once the general election comes up. But this will be sort of the first insight we get into how this board is going to handle disagreements about Sunday voting and on-campus voting, which are always pretty big issues.
Mm-hmm. Something else I wanted to mention before we get to headliner. We talked about oversight committees this week. Had an update this past week about House oversight, the House arm of GovOps, and records that they've requested from UNC about Ralph Barrick, who is the famous coronavirus researcher. There was an appeals ruling at last week that UNC Chapel Hill doesn't have to turn over additional records of Barrick's work to this group called U.S. Right to Know. Meanwhile, I had spoken to Speaker Hall and heard that the documents that House Oversight requested, I believe it was last June now, that they've received a lot of them. We may not see any result of this other than there were some records that they had and looked over, and not everything that GovOps requests ends up being any sort of hearing.
So what exactly are they looking for in these records?
So the list was I'm glad I pulled this story up, and I didn't know you were going to ask me that. But so what the General Assembly asked was all records sought by U.S. Right to Know for a series of dates from 2020 to 24. Those are the records. Now, UNC gave Right to Know a whole bunch of records, but this was just like these other ones that they were withholding. And there's this long argument over, I don't even want to explain the appeals ruling. I'm glad that you cover the judicial branch, and I only cover it a little bit when I need to. But I'd rather read I think a bill draft maybe than a ruling. But you do a much better job of breaking all of that down. The other documents are that they requested are all documents that were provided to members of Congress about Barrick, the Barrick lab, the COVID-19 virus, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, any communication from account connected to the lab or accounts connected to the Wuhan Institute, the Eco Health Alliance, or the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency from 2018 to 2021. So we're talking about a lot of documents, and the quote I have, Hall had told me is that there's a ton of documents that our folks have gotten, and as he understands it, they'd maybe spoken to Barrick as well. So this could be the last we hear of it. We don't know. So, but that's the update on that. All right, moving on to our picks for headliner of the week. Kyle, I'll start with you.
So I'm going to go with the planned closure of 6 international study centers at UNC Chapel Hill, the state's flagship university. I covered a protest there last week where hundreds of students and faculty came out in opposition to these closures. The university has said that it's going to save money in the long run, but students say that this is betraying the university's promise to be a global university. Some of the centers that are planned to be closed are the Center for African Studies, Center for European Studies, the Institute for the Study of the Americas. So all of these are facing closure. It's not exactly sure what the timeline is going to be on that or how it's going to affect the faculty who work in those departments, but we might see more opposition coming from students and professors soon.
All right. My headliner, I'll end on a lighter note. Before we started recording, we were talking with producer Kevin Keister about putting away our Christmas decorations and knickknacks and older generations' propensity for accumulating a lot of things and a lot of things to display. I'm in the camp of it's 12 days of Christmas. You don't take your decorations down until Epiphany, which is January 6th. So that's what I finally finished wrapping up this past weekend, and now everything seems empty and plain as we go into the rest of this new month of the new year. So we can still say Happy New Year for a couple of weeks now. I'm sure plenty of you out there, or January 2nd, done. No more saying Happy New Year. All right, we're at a time for the News and Observer. I'm Dawn Vaughan here with Kyle Ingram, producer Kevin Keister. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
For more from our politics team, subscribe to the News and Observer at newsobserver.com/subscribe. Follow us on Twitter at Under the Dome and NC Insider, and sign up for our weekly political newsletter, also called Under the Dome, at newsobserver.com/newsletters. Thanks for listening.